fighting with the Japanese, you had to keep your head down, of course, all the time. The worst part about it was having your mate killed beside you. And it was a terrible time to spend with your mates dying in front of you. You're trying to help them.
The Japanese planes kept coming. They were suicide bombers, they weren't. We saw 4 or 5 hit the Australia. We saw one bounce off the side of it. We saw others go into the water because they'd been hit before they did any harm. It was just, we had great sorrow for our mates on the Australia.
This is a photo of me landing at Buripapad on the 1st of July 1945. I'm at the front of the landing craft.
Hey there everyone, this is Rishi Sharma with Remember World War II. I'm super excited to share today's video with you guys. It features several different Australian World War II veterans talking about their experiences on the front lines and some very important words of wisdom. Australia had a large part in the Second World War, but all too often their contributions get overlooked on the world stage. As you can imagine, it cost a lot of money to be on the road full-time, interviewing different World War II veterans in various parts of the world, and I really would like to thank the Stanley W. Eskram Foundation for helping make this trip financially possible. You guys are the best, and I also want to give a shout out to monthly contributors Garrett Bolus and Charles Smith. Hopefully other people watching will join you guys and help make sure that these World War II stories are going to be preserved so future generations will always get to understand innately the true cost of our freedoms. This production was also made possible through a partnership with the Returned Services League, also known as the RSL. They are a wonderful veterans organization in Australia dedicated to supporting the veterans of Australia in any way possible. I really would encourage you guys to check them out and donate if you can. The RSL really stepped up and helped connect me to so many different World War II veterans, and I specifically would like to thank Tony Harrison, Sylvia McDonald, Tyler McDonald, and Andrew Law of the RSL for their help in connecting me to some of these heroes who you're about to hear from. But without further ado, let's get back to the video and hear firsthand from some of the Australian members of the greatest generation.
When war broke out, I couldn't get in there quick enough. But I remember saying to my mother when the war looked like being declared, we'll be soldiers, you know. And her brother was a soldier in the First World War, so we didn't realise how hurtful it was for her to see her boys going away, possibly killed anyway. But luck has it, how we all survived.
When we were training, they did live firing overhead. Yeah. We were I don't know if I tell you, but we were doing training up at Atherton, and we were having our lunch. And the artillery was flying overhead. And next thing, bang, a drop shot, what we call a drop shot, right in front of us. I was about 10 back, and it killed 6 in front of me, where the shell landed, you know, during our lunch break. But I can still remember that. But still, that was during the training.
Before I could become a medic, I was just a rifleman and doing my job, and of course sometimes we'd have a shell land near us. Other times you would come across the Japanese in trenches and you get a warning shot from them. Then you realise that you had to do something about it. So what you had to do sometimes, pull the pin out of a grenade, get near enough to where they were trenched in, and throw the grenade. And yet we always had some way of using an explosive to throw at them. And other times, if a head bobbed up, bang, sometimes you wouldn't know whether you hit a body or not. And other times, there'd be too many of them, you know. And being hidden, you didn't know how many. So sometimes you had to walk away and not do anything, you know.
But it was on Bougainville. We were out on a patrol for the day, a reconnaissance patrol. The forward scout yelled out something, I'm not sure what, but it meant enemy. With that forward scout was a group of PIB, that's Papuan Infantry Battalion. They all went sideways. We knew there was trouble. Our blokes, though, were waiting to see what was happening, and I was out. I had a machine gun, that's why I was separate. And here's 4 Japs coming around behind us. Loud and clear. And I jumped up, they saw me. I couldn't fire from there because there was a bit of a machine gun. You can't, from the hip it's hard work. They saw me, panicked, straight back into the jungle, disappeared of course, so we fired a few hand grenades in there. That was that day's work.
I remember one time on Bougainville that Snowy Hill and I were advised to go up and pick the wounded up, and we had to go up the beach. But while we were doing that, the barges come in and the Japanese opened up on us, and we were going up the beach and the shells were dropping all around us, and I mean dropping all around us, and none of them hit. None of them hit us. Very, very fortunate. Very fortunate. The Lord was looking after us. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. When we went up to pick up this fellow, we were told that he had passed on, and in the meantime we were getting all these shells around us, but we come home without him.
I was a member of a 3-man crew for an Orlican gun, which is a heavy machine gun, which is anti-aircraft essentially. That trip we made to Leyte was one of the biggest convoys of ships I've ever seen. Over 700 ships, and the view in the bay was just astonishing of that number of ships all gathered together. We had only one challenge of an overhead aircraft, and he met with such a wall of fire that it was like looking at an Indian teepee where all the shells met, and the centre of it was the plane. The telling shot was somewhere a big gun, like a 4-inch or 6-inch anti-aircraft gun, which puts up a 4 or 6-inch shell with a timing piece that is measured in height. And this chap, in the spur of the moment, it were all seconds, not minutes, put a measure on that he reckoned was right. That exploded alongside the aircraft, and that was the end of any sort of fight. The plane was out of control and came down. The other thing that happened later on was that 2 torpedo bombers entered on our starboard side and came through the convoy looking like they were unscathed, although they were being shot at all the way, and came past the stern of our vessel. One of them just peeled off and went into the water with his torpedo. Obviously they'd got the pilot. All the guns that could train on them from the whole fleet were firing at these aircraft. The firepower was tremendous because everybody had good anti-aircraft equipment. The other one continued on not very far and released his torpedo when it was almost level with the stern of Canimbla. But it went, we were waiting for an explosion because the ships were just so many. But however many ships, there's always more water. And there was no explosion, the thing just sank eventually. But they were very close to us and we were a bit concerned that we'd get through because we knew when we saw them coming down the passage that we were in line. I know the Japanese planes were being hit because we could see pieces flying off them. And when they came past, they were not injured enough that they couldn't fly, but I assumed by then they'd got some of the shells through the front of the plane, got the pilot.
Oh yeah, I've been bombed and strafed by them, yeah. The last time these Japanese planes come up to rake the whole valley from end to end, I could nearly reach out and touch the pilot as he went by, so close he was. That was up the Ramu Valley there. The Japanese Zero planes, yeah. One particular guy, he got half his face sliced off with shrapnel. And I never saw him till I got back to Australia. Went and saw him in the hospital. And he said, "Bad as that, is it?" Because I must have got a shock on my face when I saw him, because it just sheared off, you know, a little bit of bone from the nose sticking out through. Oh, shocking. Yeah, Max Duffy. So.
Some of our landing craft brought casualties back to the ship because we had a ship sick bay, or virtually a hospital, and being a converted passenger liner, they had plenty of room for a decent sized sick bay, so they could accommodate perhaps a dozen injured people on the ship. And I remember one time I brought aboard burns victims, and it was the most horrendous smell going past the sick bay. The smell of burnt flesh lives in my memory.
Fairly regularly, they'd fire a small mortar. They're about 15 inches long, and, or I think that was a correct measurement. They'd stand out in the jungle and fire them at us from a couple of 100 yards away or something like that. This day they fired about, I think it was 17 or something. However, when it was over, one bloke was just sitting there and no movement, and we inspected him. There wasn't a mark on his body, no blood anywhere. So we decided he'd had a heart attack. If that happens, you've got to try and get them back to base. The doctors want to know for sure what's killed him. And would you believe what happened? He had a piece of shrapnel in his brain. It was pinhead in size. And that's what killed him. And there I was with a bomb was big enough to kill 15 or 20. Mine never went off. Just the luck of the game.
At the field hospital, when I was helping the doctor amputate the leg below the knee, after cutting it off, I said to him, "What will I do with the doctor?" He said, "Throw it in the bag with the rest." And they had a special bag that they used to take away and take back to examine all the limbs that had been cut off, and that was a terrible thing. Being wounded on the right side of the ear, just the tip, it was nothing to really worry about, and so it all was well and good, but just being wounded was too close a call, you know, and how lucky was I with God's help. Oh, you know, I couldn't get over it. A sniper had hit me with a bullet, and we're just turning a bend at the time, and when I looked up, there was no men around. They shot through on me. So I decided to run too, and I caught up with the boys, and I called them a few names for leaving me.
I went as a reinforcement to the 58th, 59th Battalion, which was a Melbourne outfit. I ended up serving in New Guinea and in Bougainville. And I was in the mortars, 3-inch mortars. And because I was taller and long, they had what they call a base plate. When the thing fired, it would drive into the mud. It was 110-pound weight, so they dumped that on top of my pack. Bloody near bury me in the mud. Jesus Christ. Yeah, shocking. That's why my deafness, because we never had muffs over our ears or anything. You drop that in there and there's this enormous explosion, psh, you know. It's like if you're in say in a blacksmith, something like that, with a hammer and bash and away. So I come out of the war with very damaged hearing. Yeah. And apart from the fact I got blown up once, which didn't help, and bulk of my possessions are up on the top of a tree about 100 feet up some. Nothing left. All I ever found was a little photo I had of a girl I used to write to. But even then, the shrapnel had torn the photo in half, kind of.
After this landing, the next one was at the Lingayen Gulf. And it had the same sort of features to start with the heavy bombardment to make sure that the shore landing wouldn't be a disaster. And we'd safely, the bombardment had been comprehensive and effective, and we unloaded and re-hoisted our barges well within our programmed time, and were allowed to back off. And so we moved our ship away about 5 miles, and we were able to watch the proceedings. This was where this astonishing event happened of the emergence of some Japanese aircraft in a planned and well-organised suicide bombing raid, and they picked as a target the Australian capital ship, HMAS Australia. And they concentrated on that and were fired on from all quarters, but the planes came at intervals of about 2 or 3 seconds. They came from an invisible airstrip which was beyond the coastal hills. We saw them as they came up over the coastal hills, went down onto the water level for the distance between there and the ships, because that left them off radar. And when they got near to their target, they went up in a steep climb over the top and down in a suicide dive. And the first couple, so I think 4 perhaps, hit the superstructure of Australia, wiped out all the senior personnel, wiped out all the gear, the steering gear and the power and all the rest of it, so that there was some little lapse while they got into the auxiliary equipment below deck. And then they really were helpless in the water for the rest of that battle, but they hit with a great explosion, and all we could see then was smoke and flame and pieces of the Australia scattered all over the place. It wasn't pretty. The Japanese planes kept coming, but were repulsed by the gunfire, the combined gunfire of all the ships that were in the harbour, having landed troops or in the process. And they were suicide bombers, they weren't. We saw 4 or 5 hit the Australia. We saw one bounce off the side of it. We saw others go into the water because they'd been hit before they did any harm. And you wouldn't, different people would have a different view of things because you can't see everything that's going on when it's happening almost 360 degrees around you. So that it was just, we had great sorrow for our mates on the Australia.
We had a few burials at sea of injured soldiers who passed away, and they'd lay them out on a board and drape them with a flag and stitch them up in a canvas hammock and tip up the board, and they'd drop into the ocean. Well, that's pretty dramatic, and they'd fire a volley of shots as well. We were in convoy with HMAS Australia, and she had quite a few men injured, severely injured, and they were buried at sea, and all the ships in the convoy came to attention, and they lowered 5 or 6 boards up and they dropped into the ocean. Yeah, doesn't leave you. Think of that.
And of course, we were only kids, not quite grown up, but we really became men. Yeah, it still gets to me a little bit, thinking of all the good mates I had, and dying in front of me, and I couldn't do much about it. We had to put them in shallow graves. Now, that was the worst part about it. When the war finished, an army jeep came in and picked up all the bodies from the shallow graves. I had one man that died. We couldn't bury it. We had a job having to bury him where he was laying down, because the back of him was a shell had landed in the back of him, and we had to be careful when we dug the grave beside him to put him in the grave. We didn't know whether the shell would go off. It was a shell that landed but didn't explode. So as far as I'm concerned, he's still up there. I don't know, you know. It's just one of those things.
Especially the ones that got killed. Yeah, I remember them. Actually, the last casualty in the war was the best mate of mine. Sniper got him, Japanese sniper. He went as an escort. They had a tank escort for the tank. Sniper picked him off. Georgie Hope, fantastic little guy. Yeah, I can still see him playing on the piano. Mama's little darling of Shortland, Shortland. Mama's little darling of Shortland, Shortland bread. Yeah, he was a good guy. Only the good die young, I said. I don't know. Anyway, sad.
We'd find Japanese on the ground dead, and they never used to take away their dead. We used to, the Americans and Australians, always picked up their dead and took them away. But the Japanese used to just leave their dead bodies where they had been shot. We found one Japanese dead on the track one day, and where he'd fallen, he had his bum up in the air, and every time you passed him by, you felt like kicking him, but we weren't allowed to go near the body because they used to put dynamite, anything. If you moved the body, you'd blow up, you know. So, and the Japanese, very cunning, they were.
When action stations are called, the signal is relayed throughout the ship in bells on every deck and mess deck. You can't miss them, and you just bolt to your action station. I remember one time the Master at Arms, who's in charge of the lower deck on the ship, was coming through the deck, mess deck, and was one of the fellows racing up to his action station with a tin hat on and a towel round his waist, not dressed. And the Master at Arms said to him, "Go and get dressed, O'Connor. When we want an ironclad bastard, we'll call on you." Humour in adversity.
Then one day we were out on patrol, and the Japanese used to make a lot of noise. And I said, let's hide in the jungle. So there's only 12 of us, and it sounds like a lot of noise. I'd say there could be 30 or 40 chaps coming down. So we got off the track and hid behind the bushes in the dense jungle. And anyway, sure enough, the Japanese came along, and there would have been about 40. And right where we were hiding, they decided to have a smoko. So they stopped for a while and sat down was able to make a cup of tea or coffee for themselves and a smoke. Then one of them came over and peed on the bush on my mate that I shared my trench with, Spud Tate. And I've got my hands up in prayer. Don't sing out. And I knew he didn't like being peed on. So after they left, he said, "That bastard pissed on me, Doug." I said, "Just as well you kept quiet, Spud. We wouldn't be here." So that was another. And we used to come across Japanese dead and wouldn't pick them up. And at times we had to be careful of being ambushed.
Oh, it was terrific feeling, you know, to know that the war is over and you didn't have to fight anymore, you know. Not going to sacrifice your life, you're coming home, you know. It was a great feeling to be able to get that feeling, you're coming home.
The best part of it was I came off guard duty one morning and there's a hell of a lot of noise going on and shots being fired up in the air. And I said, "The war's over, the war's over." I said, I wouldn't go shooting around too much. The war might be over, but they may not know it. So we've still got to be careful. So that was all right. But that was about the 15th of August.
Well, future generations, be good to all. Don't judge people, and try to realise that we're all in the same boat. There's nobody better than others. We're all the same. And it depends on what we put into life is what it reflects back on us. And if we do good, that's it. That's all I can say. And never be jealous of other people. That's where they go wrong. Oh, they got to have their money, or they got to have this. Instead of living the best way you can, looking after your family, don't look for enemies. Don't look for enemies. And do the best to be helpful to all. That's all I can say, because I'm lucky. I've lived to this age, but I look back, I haven't always been perfect, that's for sure. But I hope I've learned something, that's all.
Well, as far as they're able to fight injustice and fight for freedom for all.
Learn to live with each other, because I know there's no place in this world for hate and bigotry. That's what starts bloody wars anyway. Well, the alternative would have been unthinkable if we were under the Japanese heel. If they'd have won the war, it would have been something too terrible to think about. But I believe today's generation, the Japanese are not the hate-filled people that the samurai mob was. People that go over there now say you can't blame the sons for the fathers. So that's it.
As what kind of man do you want people to always think of you?
Just an ordinary Joe, yeah, nothing special, because there was millions others like me. We just felt we did the right thing, and that's how it turned out.
Thank you so much for watching. What a humble generation. We truly owe them everything. As I mentioned earlier, the RSL was very helpful in setting up some of these interviews, They are a great organization, and if you can support them in any way, please do. But don't just take it from me. Let's hear what one of the heroes has to say about the RSL.
I'm proud to be a member of the RSL in Corro, and I can't thank them enough. You can't do enough for us, really. They're doing a good job, and I appreciate them doing what they are, helping us out. Thanks aren't enough sometimes, you know. So, no, I appreciate your service, not only to me, but to everyone, you know. And it's a good club. It's the best club I've ever been in.
As always, God bless the World War II veterans.